Good morning, children. In a few moments, your programs will begin. This week's interesting fact. Did you know that a few hundred years ago, England created the drug dealing industry, growing opium in India, cultivating it, and then moving it using the British Navy, and selling it on to the poor people of China, creating misery for millions? The turmoil created was the catalyst for two full-scale conflicts. Known as the Opium Wars, they lasted for decades and ended with China leasing Hong Kong to the United Kingdom for 100 years in return for stopping the flood of drugs into mainland China. More fun and crazy facts next week. And now, this week's Teenage Wasteland. The UK is in a deep recession. Unemployment, poverty and high interest rates are major causes of economic problems. Manufacturing industries are declining. Football hooliganism is rife. People are scared. In Coventry, the UK's motor city, a drug-fuelled musical youth cultural revolution is taking place, and laws and civil obedience have been thrown out the broken window. Let's go back 30 years and reflect, learn and think with Teenage Wasteland.
Plastic. Automatic.
As a 10-year-old, I was in the church. My father was a pastor. There was 11 of us in the house. So you can imagine, it wasn't easy.
Once you get an understanding of what poverty means, it does hit you very hard emotionally.
There wasn't a lot of opportunities, especially, I can talk about young black men especially.
Going to school, didn't have no PE pumps, so I couldn't play.
Poverty, working class, meant that someone in your house or your family actually was able to get a job.
Why am I getting hand-me-downs? Having limited resources, limited finances, it then opens up in your mind somewhat, because you start to look a bit more in depth about what you haven't got.
Everybody is a product of their life experience.
And it did start to impact on me, probably mentally and emotionally.
Like, I was brought up to think, if you get a job, it's the answer to a lot of things.
Everybody has a skill. Everybody has something that they're good at.
I always believed everybody is a free world. Everybody does what they do. As long as they're not offending people and affecting others. That was my philosophy.
Earn money. If you could do better than that, you get a trade, and then you've got a focused career.
Sometimes they never get to find out what that is because the opportunities are really not there.
I didn't ever expect to be going to university or taking any path like that, because that idea wasn't put into my head, that was for others.
You were growing up yearning, wanting things like a can of pop or a pair of trainers, and I don't mean the black plimsolls that you used to get from Woolworths for 99p. You were willing to, you had aspirations, and by any means possible, you knew that that's how you were going to get on.
So it's important that this subject is spoken about more.
And of course, there's different types of drugs. You know, if we're talking about cannabis and crack cocaine, it's night and day the difference between people who use those sort of substances.
Cannabis, marijuana, which I do not call a drug.
You had lads going around glue sniffing and sniffing gas.
The friends that I was hanging about with all started smoking pot.
It was a very peaceful happening.
Acid taps, and said they were, they were very colourful, they were very exciting.
Get a sheet of chips. We'd all eat chips, and you know what our fail-safe was? Taking cartons of orange juice with us, just in case you have a bad one neck, that was it.
And I often think that if alcohol was introduced today, that'd probably be outlawed as well. But obviously alcohol's been around for thousands of years.
With trying to enjoy life, there's usually a balance that you pay off with something else.
You buy a little bit off someone, you see them coming around and giving your mate some, and then you start getting it off them.
I was living in the Frontline Hillfields from about 16. I've had one job in my life.
So-called ecstasy, etc., that was coming through. So there was a market that was being set up for it.
Opened my mind to lots of different things.
The reputation, Coventry, for a lot of years, not just with drugs, as organisers, as stern people, has been going on for decades.
Then everyone was getting into their pills and whiz.
In the Borstalls and in the young offenders' prisons, it was becoming more prominent. And I knew lads outside where, and people would come up and they'd say, well, give you that little bit of weed on a visit. And even on the inside, it was an enterprise.
Took the anger and frustration that people had from before, which had to also do with political stuff.
People wanting to be happy, not be sad.
I'm certainly aware of a lot of people who started out selling ecstasy in the nightclubs, at the Eclipse, places like that.
And then once I got into raving, that's when I discovered pills, and they were like £10 each back then. I think like back in the older days, like they were 15, 20s.
At school, fractions were impossible. But as soon as I started selling draw or being around drugs,
it did create a new type of entrepreneur. There was a lot of money to be made.
I think that's what drug dealing brought to the entrepreneurial young people without anything.
It was an expensive game, so I had to sell them to be able to afford to go to raves.
A tenth, an eighth, a quarter, a half, an ounce. It became something that I understood because it was money and I had to get it right.
Party drugs come into the city and it changed the dynamic of the city.
Ecstasy played a massive part in the amnesia days, the Eclipse and obviously the Edge.
Everyone wanted to be a dealer all of a sudden, everybody was dealing.
They couldn't get any, so I said, well, I'll sort you out. So I went and got some, cut it up.
I was raving every week, so you end up selling every week.
And there were drugs going around the place which I just didn't know about.
All my friends then were taking ecstasy.
Popping pills.
On a level of highness I've never seen in my life.
So I wasn't in that field.
Their faces are going.
Danced, I was excited, I think I cried.
Everybody's coming up to me.
I was emotional, I was happy.
Really didn't understand what was going on.
I was feeling up, I was feeling down.
Random people coming up to me, sweating, trying to be my mates that I didn't know.
I didn't know, and it kind of didn't interest me.
And I was actually pretty scared.
And there was people doing whiz in the week just to do their washing up.
People who are very intelligent, entrepreneurial.
You've got people who did it to just show off.
We'd just start buying lumps of whiz.
Used to get tenths, eighths.
Knowing that if we sold that, we'd get that for free and then we could have that.
If there's an opportunity in any life, walks of life, people will take it.
I viewed it as an enterprise.
People who did it to survive, to look after their family.
I was involved in buying and selling things, and even petty thieving, you know, some stealing.
And you could see it in the car park, you know, you could see people getting sold things all the time.
See a lot more Class A's being taken.
Then I got into it a bit too much and just started taking more and more, and then you just start selling more and more.
To maintain this image that I was building up.
Thinking, well, what do I do with this? I haven't had this much money before. My life seems to be good. What do I do next?
We would use the term drug dealer.
They're transcending into a different world.
Very much depends on the level of drug dealing that we're talking about.
And okay, the product is illegal. There are ups and downs and things about it.
You know somebody that can get hold of something in another part of the country. You build up a business relationship.
You're getting people who themselves are becoming vulnerable.
I'm standing in the middle floor of the Eclipse, mashed. And a lad that was in my class at school, Tyrone, bounces past.
Everyone kind of knew me, so I was getting pills and selling them. Then before I knew it, I was like, you know, selling pills in the clubs and everything.
and you build yourself a reputation. So once that reputation's maintained, then more doors open for you.
And says, "Are you after anything?" We're chatting for a minute, and he explains to me that he's a drug dealing apprentice and he's learning the trade. This was becoming a way of life in Coventry for people to get on and make a living.
I was getting a lot of attention just because of my colour and my dreadlocks. So I would work that little bit harder to make sure that I kept the harassment minimal.
I developed a circle of friends that were seriously involved in it. And then at which point did I say, do you know what? Yeah, I'm going to have a bit of this.
You say I was starting off with half an ounce, then it was an ounce, and then before I knew it, I was buying a 9 bar.
Those that did were getting more organised, but you're led into a world that you're not used to.
And then the next thing, everyone was wanting pills, and it was, 10 or 20 of a night time. Next thing, I was knocking out 30 and 40 of a night. It worked out where I was still working at the time as well. I never touched my wages for 6 months.
They weren't buying property, they weren't trying to set up business, they were just trying to buy the fastest car, the biggest gold chain.
If you lived in your wood ends, your hill fields.
As soon as they get some money, it's great.
The successful people that you saw, the people in the big cars, the people with the money.
Well, they've had to struggle and strive for everything.
People that seemed to be on it, you know what I mean? Those were the people that were selling drugs.
So as soon as they get some money, they spend.
You start building yourself up to something that you're not. It's a delusion.
Later on, I thought I was getting a bit clever.
And you have no real understanding of the consequences because you're blinded by the finances, the lifestyle, the reputation that you're getting.
There comes a time when it's down to you. You're at the crossroads to make up your mind. Is it good to continue, or do you need to take a left or a right?
And it's not really success because every success has a price to be paid for.
But the skills, the time, the effort, the work that goes into it, it's to be applauded if it was applied in a legal manner.
I think that was the start of drug dealing and criminality in this city.
This wasn't a 9-to-5 job, and this is not going to be acceptable. It doesn't have a green light, it doesn't get a green card. It forces you to live a particular type of life in a particular type of way.
Because I was stupid, I was a kid, I didn't know what I was doing.
I wasn't in it to make money, I was in it just to get off my chops.
Some of them enjoyed it. Some of them, you hear the stories, they brag about it, or they had the police chasing it.
And I fucking loved it.
And then often those people went on to get involved with other substances at later dates.
I know a lot of people who did it for a long time and were successful.
The greed started to take over people as well.
But they would have been more successful if they had more ambition.
And we were naughty back then, and it was kind of a game. It was all part of it.
This area is covered by West Midlands Police. So you have Coventry, Birmingham, Wolverhampton.
Even when I got my collar felt for the first time.
To me, being a sensible person, if you're doing something and you know it's not legit, you cannot turn it into your bread and butter.
You're always looking over your back. People may want to hurt you because you are quite successful.
You can be the butter on the bread, but it cannot be your bread and butter.
Poverty, dysfunctional families, lack of support, lack of direction, lack of self-confidence, esteem.
Drug dealing was the new top boy. It wasn't who was the hardest anymore. It was who was respected for selling what.
You are going to venture off, especially if you're being influenced by older people.
A lot of them just wanted to make a lot of money.
Generally speaking, they have disdain for drug dealers.
Wanting to make more, wanting to continue, seeing no end to selling drugs.
I've had my door go in 3-4 times. I've had houses done that have had stuff in.
soon as you get to a certain level, try think a bit more, invest in a couple of properties, do things.
If you're growing up in an area where the only success you see is success for doing, being involved in criminality or doing things that are not right, then that's going to be you.
I've seen some people that have applied them skills and made themselves hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds. At that time, brilliant, applaud it to a certain degree, but it changes you. Having that much money, that much power, people relying upon you to supply.
Don't just continue, because one day the law will catch up with you.
All the transferable skills he had from selling drugs, from marketing to customer service to just supply and demand, getting the best price for your products.
Like any market, very competitive. You have to maintain your customer base. So from my perspective and from what I've seen, that's when it started to fall apart, because there's a lot of people getting involved in this enterprise that weren't as trustworthy as the original people that you'd probably met in prison, that you knew was a bit stern, that you knew would keep their mouth shut, that you knew could take a fall if they had to. There was too many people coming into the game just to make the money.
You don't realise the consequences. You don't think of the whole journey of what can and can't happen.
And you often think if you'd gone into legitimate business, you would succeed. You'd be a multi-millionaire legitimately.
That was my insight, because I knew at some point it's gonna fall over.
They've taken a wrong path.
I got charged with 2 counts of possession with intent to supply.
Lads from Willenhall, Wyking, Bell Green, Woodend, Canley, Tile Hill, Charlesmore. There was a lot of success in the city, and you could see it. And they had all created their own little ways of making money, and it was all underground.
There's no point in dressing things up, sugarcoating things. If they're in big trouble, I tell them, you're in big trouble.
One day they were little kids, next minute they were crack dealers. Give them a little while, they're no longer around.
And then to see other people that I'd grew up with, that I had strong feelings for, our friendships dissolved because you had to remove yourself from it, which was hurtful, but from my perspective, I could see where it was going to end up.
There was a minority who seemed to realise what was happening, and they turned their life around and became successful in a business.
I looked back and I thought, I'm never looking over my shoulder again. One, because you got the police, and secondly, you got someone wanting to tax you.
A lot of them enjoyed the lifestyle. Enjoyed the lifestyle of not just having money, enjoyed the lifestyle of having items that people would praise them for.
I see people in the worst moments of their life. People are looking at potentially 28 years in jail. They've never spent a day in jail in their life.
Once Black Friday came or the crash came, on any individual involved in it, it's horrific, it's horrific, especially since the Proceeds of Crime Act came into it.
Where there's a lot of money, there's a lot of problems.
But they're looking at you, hoping that, you can save them. And sometimes you can, but sometimes, unfortunately, it's about damage limitation.
Prior to that, you might get handcuffed and you go, you know what, I'll swallow it, do me a little time. You've still got the financial reward to come out to.
It's not just you might get 10, 15, 20 years in jail.
Once Proceeds of Crime Act came into it.
What happens then is, after you've been convicted, the government will then go after you for your assets.
And if they get you, they're stripping you of everything.
Other people will play hardball and say they're not getting a penny out of me. And I'll say, look, you do realise there's going to be a cost to that, and that's going to be up to 5 years extra behind the door.
Because people will try to want to take that money or set you up or rob you.
There's people that was aware of that, so they've moved into other areas because you've got the financial backing. So again, there's that industrialisation of the brain. Do you know what? I know this might happen, so I'm going to diversify.
Some people will say, I just want to get out of here as soon as I can. They can have what they want. I just want to get back to my family.
I've come very close to going to jail a few times, and I wish, now looking back, that side of it, was it worth it for the thought of losing 3, 4, 5 years of my life, sometimes 20 years of your life?
Has it been worth it? You know, would I go through it again? Would I change things that I did? Would I apply myself differently?
If I'd have known that that was the thing, would I have done it? Probably not.
You know, you're putting your whole freedom at stake when you're involved in it.
The kudos of the street was too much of a temptation to make them stop doing it.
If I could have changed that path, if I could have went left or right on any given day, when I was 22, 23, I'd have done so. You know, but some lads would go, no, I'm happy with the path that I've taken.
And they just carried on because in that world they were king.
You don't care back then. I think it was like not having kids and stuff as well. I just didn't give a shit.
It was too much for too long.
You know, and there are other people that you see that don't give a shit. They're just looking at that money, ain't there, and wanting that fast cash.
And a lot of the cases, they have a benefit figure which may be 2, 3, 4, 5 million, and any assets that you've got up to that amount, they will take them off you.
All of that effort they put in has gone.
You can be belligerent and say you're not getting a penny.
There was no way they could explain it off.
But guess what? You'll then serve time in default.
And then it's all caught up with them.
And the head of the indictment got 18 years for selling cocaine. But they said because he went to the Caribbean a lot, so they said, you've got hidden assets. I don't think he did. He was one of these guys who just lived the high life, spent all his money. So in the end, he got 10 years on top for not paying his Proceeds of Crime Act order, his confiscation order. So he got a 28-year sentence. Now, you might be able to cope if you're a younger man, but if you're in your 40s and you're going to serve 14 years behind the door and then come out absolutely penniless in your 60s, you know, it's just not worth it. You can't start again in your 60s.
People are going to do these things. People are going to do illegal things. People are going to do illegal drugs.
Are you going to take that knowledge and pass the knowledge on to other people?
If you were educated, it probably put a lot of people off from going too far down that tunnel.
To stop them making the same mistakes and have informed decisions.
Youngsters, parents, everybody.
Mentally, spiritually.
If they know what they do, what the consequences are.
It should be spoken about, because sometimes, as I see, even now, when it's too late is when they're speaking about it.
And I got caught.
Did I want this journey? But I made my own choices.
I'm in the cells and the officers turned around and said, look, give us permission or we're going to get a warrant and raid your house anyway.
Ultimately, I've made my own choices. At any given point in your life, you can make your own choice. And I think that's what I did.
The wife, the girlfriend, the children, the mother.
Oh my God, my mum, it's going to crucify, it's going to break her bloody heart.
They haven't done anything wrong. And they're the ones who have to pick up the pieces.
My mum, she battered the shit out of me, which is rightly so.
And with quick, fast money comes slow problems.
The biggest bad man and the biggest drugs man I know are probably in jail or dead now.
The old saying of if something looks too good to be true, it usually is.
Drug dealing is not what it's cracked up to be.
Maybe for that year, 2 years, it was a dream, but then the dream can collapse and turn into a nightmare.
Every day, every week, who's gone now? How many years did they get?
I shit myself because the judges turned around and all I heard was 2 years.
It very rarely ends well.
Down the line, they've been caught, they've been put in jail for like 20 years or whatever.
Wasted talent, wasted lives.
It was 2 years, suspended for 2 years.
But a lot chose to continue and lost everything, including their freedom.
There's nothing but trouble that lies down that path.
It is possible not to go down that route, even if everybody around you is doing it.
Even when my best friend was doing that, my number one right-hand man, I still stood alone. I was not interested in it.
There's always another way. There's always another way. You just need to look.
Just give us a moment, Aidy. We are all better than we know. If one day you realise this, you may never again settle for anything less. And if I was to say anything to any young people that you know, watch this and embrace it and try and learn from my experiences, just look at that and look at yourself and never give up on yourself. And always say to yourself, do you know what, I can do better. And reach out and seek the support and help and the guidance that is around you.